if any of you are coming to SRA in San Antonio, Tuesday at 3, I'm doing a session that might give you a big chuckle and will give us a chance to meet if we've not run into each other before. I'm going to refine the session I did at the University of Central Florida Financial Research Administration Conference last year, having to do with the blues and excellence in research administration. It's weird and a lot of fun, and I'll teach you a lot about both music and, I hope, work ethic. Now to the topic of today's ramble. Obviously there's a lot of ways to teach this course. I don't mean to try every one of them in one course, I promise you. But I am trying to not make you memorize a bunch of stuff or try to find application for these regulations you're reading. They're kind of suspended in air right now. You don't have anything to hook them to, unless those of you who are in the business accidentally say, oh, wait a minute. So if I'm seeming a little philosophical, it's because I'm a little philosophical. I'm trying to get you to, as I've said, develop this zeitgeist, this construct, this philosophy of your work, what it is, how you do it, how regulations as a tool and as an enabler fit into that. And what's very important is how you see these regulations, how you access them, how you apply them, and the way you communicate that to the researchers. There are a lot of people who see themselves, as I've said, as form checkers and error finders. That's not your job. You're an educator, you're a facilitator, you're part of the research endeavor. The people who see themselves as cops, as gotchas, need a new job now. If that's the way you see your job, you need a new job now. If that's the way your boss sees your job, you might need to think about that. So let's move ahead. I'm going to start posting some discussion questions that will more or less go along with the readings you're doing, particularly in the Uniform Guidance book. That's really a big book for us, okay? I'm going to try to pull out certain bits of language, certain bits of regulation, and have you discuss them and think about them in the discussion part of the software that we use, so that I can see you do it and see if other people talk about it. In parentheses, remember, class participation is a big part of your grade. It's a big part of your grade. I can't tell which way is left and right. So I wanted to tell you kind of what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it, how it applies, and make some sense of it for you if I can. One of the stupidest things that we say to PIs, and we do it all the time, and I've done it a bunch of times, and I bet those of you who are already working have, is you come up against a recalcitrant researcher, or one that just cannot believe that we're going to go through this trouble and we're only there to inhibit and pester and all that. You got to do this because the auditors will look for it. We've got to do something because audit, yada, yada, yada. We make the auditors the bad guys. It's just a terrible thing to say. Instead of telling them, this is the way the sponsor says that you can do your work. This is the way that they have set up for you to do your work in such a way that it meets their needs for responsibility, for just good practice. And there is no choice. Instead we say, no, the bugaboo's going to get us. Can't do that. So we're going to talk about some things that I hope will help you reform your thoughts on that. I want you to come to a level of consensus on these terms and talk about them, because in the, and this is a highly Rogerian counseling technique, in the expression and reflection and refinement of ideas in people's minds is where it becomes internalized, and also where you feel the constricting expectations or practices of others kind of fall away. This has to be yours. It has to be consistent with regulation and all that, but you have to believe, not just cop out, not teach you how to do it so you'll be okay. I'm looking at my notes. So, we're not going to hit every concept. We're not going to talk about everything, but I'm just going to pull some things out as you read that I hope en masse will allow you to start building this, this is what's happening. And we're going to talk about the big themes within federal regulations. Right now, and this I think is a function of the last few years of Congresses and presidencies and all that kind of stuff. I'm not beating anybody up here. There's a big concern about fraud, waste, and abuse, which has always been there. There are always people trying to game the system. There are always people who don't understand and try to use federal money for private needs and so forth. We all know that. My phone. So, well, looking for fraud, waste, and abuse puts you in the comp role, as opposed to talking about some of the terms that we'll come back to in this discussion. You've all heard about allocable, allowable, reasonable, and consistent use. And if you haven't, we will talk about that. Don't get all weird about that. So, it's important for you to think about these terms, to find where they are within the regulations, and often you'll find them in multiple places, and then to try to distill not the regulatory bean counterpart, but what are they thematically? What are the feds trying to say when they use these terms? Grad school, okay? So you're trying to build an image. You're trying to use all these different things to figure out what the regulation is for, what the constraints, as some people would see them, but the boundaries in which one works, why they're there, what it's about, what kind of practice they're trying to engender. So, let's see what I've got down here. I've just cut out all kinds of just blather. So, please, when you see these terms, and I'll try to write the discussion questions in such a way as to remind you how I want you to think about them. Stream of consciousness or thought, talk about them in the discussion list, because I'm going to be watching you. I do read these things. I don't meddle a whole lot. It's important that you start talking and I start helping shape that discussion so that we don't get caught in the everyday but 200.300/double butterfly 4 says you must, rather than, oh wait, this fits into the overall uniform, not guidance as much as attitude of the government of doing things. What am I trying to engender? Common sense. I'm trying to give you a platform to develop your common sense so that finding regulations, so acting on things becomes an innate part of what you do. Again, I want you to know where the regulations are. I want you to understand the hierarchy of regulations. I want you to get the geeky stuff. But getting the geeky stuff without understanding the impetus and without understanding the conceptual foundation will turn you into a bean counter and a BB stacker, and that doesn't help anyone. That doesn't engender positive relationships. It doesn't engender any kind of positive vibe with the researcher, and frankly limits you intellectually and limits your growth. Many of you guys want to be administrators. I'm trying to pull you out of that single job thing, as we talked about last time. I'm trying to help you become a person who may not have a lot of professional experience yet, some of you do, but who has the ability to walk into a job and understand what's going on, to have that fundamental. It's like a fundamental tone in a musical scale. There's a bottom there that establishes where everything is, and no matter where you ramble off to in the song, you come back to the fundamental. Always back to the fundamental. James Brown called it the one. When you're playing funk music within a 4-beat measure, the only beat that measured to James was 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you listen to funk was, because he understood what he was trying to communicate, because he understood where the emphasis was. I've got to remember that. So, look for these discussion questions. I'll try to get at least the first one up today. I'll do it every couple of days. I'm not trying to make your life miserable, maybe every 2 or 3 days. I want to have enough of them in there that it helps build your construct. I want to have few enough in there. It doesn't get in the way of the other things that are going on in the class. You must do these readings. You must do these reaction papers. I saw a wonderful movie about an Indian savant, mathematical savant, whose name was, I think, Ramanujan, went to Trinity College, and he just knew math. He didn't have to do long, elaborate proofs. He could look at a centuries-old conundrum formula and he'd go, oh, and write out a solution. And all these traditional mathematics people wanted to see the proof, step by step by step by step by step. How did you get there? He didn't know how he got there. He was so integral. Mathematics was so integral to this man as being, he saw it as music, he saw it as art, he saw everything as mathematics. And when he saw a mathematic opportunity, it just came up. That's how you need to work. That's how you need to understand. And that leads to creativity and growth and beautiful things and wonderful relationships. And oh Lord, you'll be tall and thin and your hair will grow back in if you're me. So look for these discussion questions. They are absolutely by design. I'm very happy to be hearing from some of you guys. I'm very happy to have some phone calls coming from some of you, and explaining things to you. It defines and refines things that I'm trying to do for you. All the ways to teach this class, and I've not found one I like yet, but I'm kind of getting into this one. I think there's an opportunity here for us to do something new, and you to walk away with the same information, but in a much more palatable and usable way. I think that's it for this morning. I hope that I've made some sense. If I haven't, jump me. And I will talk to you again in the next day or two. I hope that this is much more clear. Please tell me if these rambles are not elucidating or illuminating. Tell me what you want from them. I feel compelled as a talker to talk to you. And I don't think that just text communicates everything. So until I ramble at you again, have a good day. Have several good days. Keep it up. This is your exploration. Dig and explore. You're in graduate school. Don't worry about grades right now. Worry about being on time. I'm getting stuff late. Worried about productivity. And don't just think because I'm adorable and like to talk philosophically that you can push me around. I really need you to stay with the calendar because stuff's going to start to stack up and it's going to be bad for you and it's going to be bad for me. So, I think that's it. Have a nice day. I'll talk to you again soon. Discussion questions.